Hi, everyone. I'm Dan Alvarez, and welcome here to This Week in Anderson on the Big Guy Sportscast here on USBN Sports. And as always, I'm joined with my co-host, Steve Ellis. And Steve, we are on podcast number 11. How about that?
Danny boy, this is great stuff. We got another great guest here, one that you can just close your eyes and listen to his voice and everybody would recognize it.
Absolutely, and that's what I was just getting ready to do to introduce him. He's a 1997 graduate of Anderson High School, also the voice of the Anderson Redskins, and also the voice at Lawrenceburg Speedway, and he's also a paraprofessional at Anderson High School. And Chad Cunningham. Chad, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, Dan and Steve. And Dan, I'm a little bit disappointed. I'm number 11.
Yeah, I know.
But way ahead of Moose, right?
Oh, absolutely, and that's the key is that we could not get Moose on before you. There's just no way it's happening.
Still rank. That's good.
Now, I appreciate you reaching out and asking me to be a part of this. I haven't watched the first 10 entirely, but I've watched clips of them and checked out what you guys have been doing and the way you've been handling it. It's been awesome. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, I appreciate it, Chad, and we say that everybody in the community knows your voice. You've been at Anderson High School for a while, and talk a little bit about that how you kind of got started in to the broadcasting part of it and how you ended up at Anderson High School.
Well, that's a great question. It's kind of a cool story. I decided in 5th grade that I wanted to be. Don't laugh at me, but I wanted to be like Ken Brew.
Oh,
Ken Brew was like my idol when I was in 5th grade, and I remember back at Summit Elementary, they had this Fine Arts Day every year in March. Yeah. And one was dress up like who you want to be in life.
You dressed up
as Ken Brew. I don't know what grade it was. 5th or 6th grade. I dressed up as Ken Brew for Fine Arts Day and walked around with a microphone and stuff.
Oh,
I was
my
in a suit
God.
and tie. It was hilarious. He would be proud,
That's funny.
But and really that just kind of was where it was at all the way through elementary school and even really into high school. It wasn't until probably junior year in high school that I actually had dreams of being on ESPN, and that didn't quite work out that way. But that's okay. It's one of those things that when you grow up and you watch SportsCenter every night, and of course that's everybody's dream
right.
That would want to be in this kind of profession. And I don't have any regrets about what I've done. But fast forward from there, I went to Northern Kentucky and studied Bachelor of Radio Television. And it was kind of cool because actually my first venture into broadcasting relates back to Anderson, not at Anderson though. It's kind of interesting. Jerry Frickman, a science teacher at Anderson High School, who I still talk to regularly, and we still go to the racetracks and stuff together. But Jerry Frickman saw me and a friend of mine with a NASCAR T-shirt walking around Anderson High School, and people in Anderson don't really understand racing, and so
right.
It was very, very rare to see somebody and I don't mean that disrespectfully, of course, but people just don't follow NASCAR or racing in general, and Anderson Township, which is fine. But he saw me and my buddy walking down the hall with T-shirts on, and he basically stopped us and said, "Hey, do you guys like NASCAR?" Well, yeah, we're wearing NASCAR shirts. Why wouldn't we like NASCAR? And he said, "Did you know I drive cars, race cars?" We had no idea.
Yeah.
I actually never had Jerry Frickman as a teacher at school. I wasn't that smart, but no, he's a good dude. And he said, "Hey, I drive race cars on the weekends in the dirt tracks in Indiana." He said, I would love if you guys are interested in coming up and helping me on my pit crew.
Wow.
And so yeah, cool. Really cool. So that kind of started into the whole racing aspect. Now, I'd always been a racing fan. My dad had got me into NASCAR itself, but really there was a whole nother world out there with dirt track racing. Well, fast forward from there, that was probably like 1995, 96-ish. So sophomore, junior year in high school, and even as a senior, they would travel to these fairgrounds tracks in the different counties in Indiana, like Rush County, Decatur County, Shelby County. And they would travel around, and they would have an announcer that would travel with them. What just so happened right around that same time, the announcer who had been doing it for years was wanting to go a separate direction. He was actually moving out of state to Iowa. And he actually approached me when he found out what I was interested in and said, "Hey, I want you to do some of these." So that kind of opened the door to the announcing part of I guess you could say my career into announcing. Actually didn't even start at Anderson. It started at the dirt tracks in Indiana.
Wow. I thought it was the other way around.
Yeah, it didn't start long after I graduated from Anderson. Randy Corbett had contacted me in 1999.
Yeah.
So I was probably a sophomore in college at Northern Kentucky, and he had contacted me to do fill in for, I think, Ron Rossello. Is that right?
Probably.
Yeah, it was the PA announcer at Anderson at the time. So filled in for him for a time or two, and then I think he was kind of deciding that he was kind of done with it. I started doing football. In the meantime, I did girls basketball. Filled in for Chuck Gibson, if you remember Chuck Gibson, who did PA. He had a daughter that was a year older than me. What was her name? Amanda, I think. Filled in for Chuck Gibson, and that was Steve. Were you there at that time?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Okay. Yeah, so you remember that time. So I filled in time, or a few different times for Chuck, and then he decided to step away. And I cannot remember the exact year that I started kind of doing the boys basketball exclusively, but probably 2004, 2005 is somewhere around there. But been at Lawrenceburg Speedway. I did the racetrack stuff. Kind of cool. I'll tell you this real quick story. Lawrenceburg Speedway is kind of the premier dirt track in this tri-state area. It's like a palace, and the cars that Jerry Frickman was racing with happened to have a stop at the Lawrenceburg Speedway in 2007. Wow. And so I would travel with them, and Lawrenceburg Speedway would have their own announcer, and then when our cars would come on the track, I would step up to the mic and basically just announce for our cars.
Wow, that's cool.
So it just so happened that 3 days before that night at that racetrack, I got contacted by the guy that ran Lawrenceburg Speedway, coincidentally, who still runs Lawrenceburg Speedway. And he said, "Hey, my announcer is not going to be here this weekend. I would love if you would just call the whole show. So you'll call your cars and you'll call our cars as well." Well, dude, that was like dream come true right there. And I knew that was like, I believe that everything happens for a reason.
Right.
And so I did the best job I could. And literally he said, "Hey, I want you back every week you're available." I still had a commitment to finish out with the cars that I was announcing for at the time. But every opportunity I could get to come back there when I wasn't announcing for that group till the end of the year, I did. And then I've been there ever since. So pretty cool story, and couldn't be happier with the way that turned out.
You should be. So on the football side at Anderson, so what year did you start there? And I know you just finished there a couple of years ago, but what was the time frame that you were announcing the football games?
So the first football game I did was, I believe, in 1999.
99.
So,
okay.
Yeah, 99 was the first football game I announced, and for the next the few years after that, probably filled in a game or two a year. I would say early 2000s though is when I started announcing the whole home season.
All right, so I got to ask you, Chad. So when did and how did it come about the Redskins first downs? How will that come to play when the Redskins get a first down and you would announce it's a Redskins and the whole crowd would chime in, and it got to be really, really cool because everybody knew, everybody played along. How did that all come about?
So that's another great story. I did not make that up. I cannot take total credit for that. At the time, the PA announcer, and I do not know his name, the PA announcer at Miami University did something like that.
Okay.
And they had already changed to Red Hawks. So by that point, I believe, it was in the late 90s. So I had been up to a game at Miami University, and I had heard their PA announcer do something like that when Miami and the Red Hawks would get a first down. And so it's kind of cool because obviously you remember that, but other people still to this day will ask me about that. And for those of you that don't know what we're talking about, and I probably started that that was probably around the time, maybe the year before the state championship run. So maybe 2006, 2007-ish. So I didn't probably start that until then, but I was just looking for a way to generate excitement for the fans that were in the stands. I still think that, the crowd plays such an important part in any sporting event in general, and high school sporting events. I mean, kids thrive off of that excitement.
Yep.
I mean, Steve, you know what it's like when you're coaching a college basketball game. You need that crowd. You need that home crowd to help you.
Absolutely.
And so, every time Anderson would get a first down, it would just be something where I would say, that play is good for another Redskin. And then the crowd would hopefully fill in and say, first down.
Yeah.
So hold on. The question I got is, did you tell a whole bunch of people in the crowd to say, hey, I'm going to be doing this, so help me out? Say that.
I did. So the football moms, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
A couple of them were instrumental in helping me get that started. And I said to them, ladies, here's the way this works. And I explained it just the way I just told you. And awesome. I said, but here's the deal. I'm going to do this about 3 or 4 times. If it doesn't happen, I will look silly. So we will not keep doing this. If I say that play is good for another Redskin, in dead silence, not good.
Yeah.
So we were able to incorporate that, and that lasted well through the 2009 season. I kept doing it as long as possible. Of course, we had a few down years there after the 2009 campaign, and so some of the fans struggled a little bit. I still tried to do the best I could do. But the interesting thing about the first down thing is that, Dan and Steve both, you've been around Anderson football enough. There were times, and it's back to that way now, but we were beating teams by 50 and 60 points. So we get to a point where, I kind of hit like a rule when it got to when the point spread got to be about 42 points, I thought that was enough. So it wasn't about, when it's 56-0 to say that play good for another Redskin. I just called it the way it should have been called. It wasn't about making the other team, look silly or anything like that. But I will tell you, I knew some folks that would, from Glen Estee or West Claremont at the time, or Turpin, people that would know me that actually would compliment me and said, man, we loved hearing that. And we weren't even rooting for you guys. We were rooting for the other team.
Cool.
So
no,
that was cool.
I mean, people will talk about that for years to come. I mean, that'll be part of the, things they bring up, when it comes to, talk about state championship team and all stuff like that.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
So Chad, I gotta ask you, how did the transition, become the reality of you going from announcer to a referee? And I know you worked your way up, and congratulations, you're a varsity referee now. How did that all come about, and why?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. So I have always loved sports, long as I can remember. I never played football. Football is by far my favorite sport, but I grew up playing basketball. When I say playing basketball, that means attempted to play basketball. If you remember the Summit Rec League, it still goes on with Mr. Shoshkin. And, played baseball growing up until I was about 15 years old. So I love sports in general, but I realized when I got to be about 15 years old that baseball and basketball, I didn't, it was just not my thing to be on the court or on the field. But the cool thing is that with the announcing, it got me as close to being a part of the game as possible. And so the announcing stuff was awesome, and I loved it. And I kept kind of pushing a little bit further and thought to myself, well, how could I even get closer to the sport I love? In this case, we're talking about football. And I thought, I never played, so coaching was probably not an option. People aren't going to look for some person that just likes football and plays Madden football on Xbox to be their head coach. And so coaching was never really an option. Well, a good friend of mine that I graduated from Anderson with, his dad is a football referee. And so we started talking about it. He says, I think you should give it a shot. And Doug Ayers is his name. And, of course, his nephew, Nick, is the head coach at West Claremont now. And Doug's brother, Mike, was the longtime head football coach at Wofford College and just retired a couple years ago. So anyway, long story short on that part, but that was a way, Steve, for me to get closer to the game of football, which is by far my favorite sport. And you're right down there on the field. I mean, think about it. Besides being a football coach, you can't get any closer than an official.
Right in the middle of the action. Yeah.
Right. So, and as you said, I think coming into this year, I think will be year number 10 as a football official. My 3rd year coming up as a varsity official.
That's
and
great.
It's quite an honor. for somebody to approach you and ask you to be on their football refereeing crew, which had actually happened 3 or 4 years ago. And I was not ready to give up the announcing gig. And
Okay.
that was actually, I mean, it might sound silly to some people, but one of the hardest conversations I ever had, I know this is silly, but was me going into Newt's office and telling him that this is what I wanted to do. And him and Tyler Brooks could not have been, I mean, my gosh, I'm a high school PA announcer. I'm nobody really. And the graciousness and the gratitude that they showed me for
I'm sure
doing something that I really, really wanted to do, which was to try the varsity reffing in football, and it was just awesome. And I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, I still miss it to this day. I wish that there was a way that I could do both. Now, fast forward, I also do basketball. Now, I haven't really stepped up into the varsity basketball officiating yet, because I've just got 3 years under my belt with that. And I'm really, really okay with just doing the JV freshman and the middle school games. But the good thing about being a varsity basketball ref, if I choose to go that route, is I can still announce the games because of the way the schedules are on Tuesdays and Fridays.
Oh, okay.
So that's the difference. Whereas the football, it's only on Friday nights, so it's only on Friday nights. Sometimes you get a rare Saturday game. So you're on the same crew for 10 weeks. So it's not like you can say, oh, I'm only going to work 5 games, and the other 5 games when.
Which one's tougher, Chad? Basketball or football to officiate?
Basketball. Actually,
Because you got coaches like this guy here screaming and yelling and stomping his foot, probably.
That is part of it. So basketball, I would say basketball is harder to officiate. Now, part of that I will tell you is I have a lot more experience in football, and every good official that I've ever worked with has told me, in whatever sport you officiate, you hit a point in your officiating career. So we're talking like number of years where things just start to click. And that doesn't mean that you know everything and you're good to go, but that just means that the game just slows way down and it just becomes just kind of second nature. And so football, I think I hit that about year 4. So basketball, I just finished my 3rd year. So I'm hoping basketball gets a little bit better, but Dan, you hit the nail on the head. The big difference is I can still hear, I mean, I have pretty good hearing still. I can still hear people in the stands yelling at football games and coaches barking on my ear.
Yeah.
But you're right on the basketball floor, and coaches normally don't bother me. It's the moms and dads in the middle school, the 7th and 8th grade games that bother me.
Oh yeah.
Because of course they know all the rules and you don't. Me as the official, I don't know any of the rules. So, but that's okay.
Announcers, I know a lot of stuff too. I've been told that I need to shut my mouth a couple of times too. So
you might get if you're not careful. Your good friend down at UC Claremont,
love to see him.
Remain nameless. He might give you the old Chuck Maychuck.
Yes,
yeah, right.
He almost did.
The streak is counting. Yeah. So Chad, another thing that's awesome for you and for everybody around here is that you now work at the high school. So you get to see Chris Newton every day. So tell us a little bit about what you do at Anderson and what's that all about.
So, man, this is a lot of fun for me to talk about this stuff because the only regret, I honestly don't have any regrets except for this one, and then this comes full circle as well. But the only regret that I have is waiting until I was 40 years old to decide that I wanted to be a teacher.
Yeah.
And I've lived a great life in between those 20 years. So I don't really truly regret that, but it would be a lot better to be 22 or 23 and decide to be doing this stuff right now. But anyway, it's just, so, I graduated from college with the bachelor in radio television, which has been a great blessing. I mean, it's put me on, I didn't mention this yet, but it's put me on a couple cable television, national televised shows announcing racing as a pit reporter. So awesome. I did 5 or 6 episodes. So I have no regrets with that. I always wanted to be on TV. Big deal. I was on TV 4 or 5 times. It doesn't make me any better than anybody else. But, and I got to a point where I bounced around with jobs. I became a licensed insurance agent. Did that for a while. I became an insurance underwriter for a few years. Of course, I worked in the restaurant industry. I still work in the restaurant industry part-time, managed a restaurant for a while. But I got to a point to where nothing fulfilled kind of the life cycle. I'm a pretty busy guy, as you guys know, so I'm tied up in multiple things, but they're all things that I choose, and so that's the difference. And I never thought so. I always had kind of an interest in teaching, but it was always to teach history because I have a minor degree in history, so I love American history, and I never thought I would choose the special education route. I have a younger sister who has special needs, and she's got some learning disabilities. She is independent on her own, living on her own, but definitely has some struggles and some multiple personality disorders and some other, disabilities. And for the longest time growing up, I always struggled with that because I never understood why my parents treated her and disciplined her different than they disciplined me. And I really had a hard time with that. Well, something just clicked. Something just clicked with me, and I thought, you know what? I now realize why, why they are treating her differently because, she does have those disabilities, and because of those, that's why. And when I say treated differently, you understand what I'm saying there. It's
right.
not.
Yep.
It's an issue of the same discipline that I would have for not following a direction would not be the same for her. She would get more leeway, and that would always, make me mad or whatever. But so I just kind of had I guess you could call it an epiphany one day that, hey, I've always wanted to be a teacher, and special education. My older sister Melanie, you guys know who she is. She's a certified special ed. Now she teaches regular elementary classroom. So I've always kind of been around the special education aspect of the teaching, and as well as my younger sister. And I just kind of had that epiphany one day that I could help people. I could help people with special needs, and I could make a difference for them. So literally one day I decided I wasn't happy doing what I was doing, and I applied as a paraprofessional, which is like a teacher's aide at Anderson High School. And so this will be my third year there. So finished with grad school classes. I just have to student teach, which I hope to do this spring. Kind of up in the air with what's going on right now, but so I hope to student teach in a special education classroom, hopefully, fingers crossed, at Anderson this year. I'm already, I kind of got some stuff figured out before we all went into the whole pandemic thing. So haven't really done much since then because there's a few things on my end that I have to do to kind of qualify to do the student teaching. But all my classes are done with the grad school. So the end goal is to get my master's in special education, and I would be a certified K through 12 special education intervention specialist. So
that's awesome,
great.
Chad.
Good for you.
Yeah.
For you. Feel good about doing that. You mentioned your sister, and the Cunningham name is pretty popular around town. Talk a little bit about your family, and obviously you got a sister that teaches, and everybody. I mean, I know my one daughter had her, and everybody. Yeah. Was her very well known. So talk a little bit about your family.
Yeah. So we grew up, of course, in the Summit Estates area. Grew up on Citadel until I was in third grade.
Right by me.
Yeah. What street did you live on?
I was on Clemson Circle.
Oh yeah. I know Clemson Circle. Yeah. And then when I was in third grade, so that was like, I don't know, 87, 88, we moved over to the other side of Summit Estates on Wood Glen, which is off of Yellow Glen. So, and basically my parents had a house built basically right behind Penn Station. That's the easiest way to put it. But butts up into Penn Station. And so we lived there. I have an older brother, Michael, who graduated from Anderson in 1989. He was in the marching band all 4 years. And he now lives in Madera and has him and his wife have 5 children. Their oldest would be my oldest nephew, just graduated from Madera High School. He was a soccer player and a track runner. Good kid, but coincidentally named after my dad, Ben. So his name's Ben Cunningham. And Ben was born like 6 weeks after my father passed away. So my father was a Anderson Township firefighter.
Yep.
For like 27 or 28 years. And in 2001, he was diagnosed with mesothelioma, which you still see those commercials on TV. It's
Right.
it's cancer in the lungs, basically related to asbestos exposure.
Mm-hmm.
And so, perfectly healthy guy going into that, and I mean, it just wrecked his body, and he went through some pretty extensive treatments. I mean, he was at the National Institute of Health because at the time that was still a relatively unknown and very, very new illness that was plaguing people because they didn't really know the harmful effects of asbestos back in the 60s and
Right.
70s when he was really exposed to it. So he passed away then in March of 2002, and then my nephew Ben was born in May of 2002. So my older sister Melanie, you mentioned, would be second in line, and she let's see, graduated from Anderson in 1992. And Dan, you worked with her at the Lighting Center for years.
I did. I was just getting ready to say you guys live right by the Koenigs there, because that's
right across the street from Rick Koenig.
Rick?
And,
Yeah.
You remember him, Steve?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think last I heard he was in Northern Kentucky somewhere.
I don't know. I just know that he's was doing the mortgage business now, and he's doing pretty well. So I've seen him a couple of times, and
okay, good
all
for
his
him.
kids are doing well too.
Good for him. But it's funny, Dan, because even before I knew you as Dan Albers, she would always talk about Dan. And that
That's
was
right,
obviously
Chad.
you. I know.
There
I tell you
go.
what, you're a pretty
I had that
popular guy.
influence.
Yeah. But and she, Melanie has been a teacher. I think, gosh, she'd probably kill me if I said how many years, but I think it's like close to 20 years, 18, 19 years or something.
I believe it.
Been a teacher at Summit Elementary. And she's married to one of the assistant fire chiefs in Anderson Township. So, they always say once you're involved in a firefighter's family, you can't get out. So,
Right.
Wow.
So she met
true.
her. She met her current husband, Sean Smith is his name. And he's a Turpin graduate, but she met him through the fire department.
What? Did you say Turpin?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
What was I supposed to say? Bartles Road. But so she met him, and they got married, and they have two daughters. Fiona's going into 8th grade at Nagel, and Lucy will be 4th or 5th grade at Summit.
Wow.
And
That's
they're
crazy.
awesome.
That's crazy.
I get to see them the most. Melanie and I are pretty close. So, and Melanie and her husband, it's so funny because whenever I say this, people always know what I'm talking about. They are building a house on 8 Mile. And that house is across from Ria Vista, which is next to one of the big churches there. And everybody goes, "Oh, that's your sister's house? Well, when are they moving in?" And then that's why I really don't like talking about it, because they haven't moved in yet. But long story. But so that's there. It's a beautiful house. So they hopefully will be moving in soon. And then my mother, she lives in a small ranch in front. And then is it okay to keep going? Because I got two other.
Yeah. Sure.
So my parents decided growing up in the 80s, my parents had decided to be a foster family. And so they had foster children in and out of our house. I was the baby at the time. So that was pretty tough on me at the time. You go from being the baby and get spoiled, you know how that works. To having younger foster siblings in your house. And full circle, they probably had 8 or 9, 10 different foster children in their house. And Vicky and Daniel were a brother, sister, different father, same mother, who they had. And my parents, just being awesome parents that they are.
Right.
Just felt that they were being called to adopt them. And they adopted them in like 1989, I think. And
awesome.
Vicky is a year behind me. She's 41. And like I said, she's the sister that has some disabilities, but is still independent. And then my brother Dan is 37, I believe. And
awesome.
Dan is married with 3 children. He lives in Cheviot. The cool thing about Dan is I'm so proud of my brother Dan. Him and I did not get along growing up. And in our adult lives, we're brothers, of course, but we get along pretty well, I'd say. But Dan, right out of high school, didn't really have a direction, so he went into the military, and he joined the Army, and so he graduated in 2001. Was at Fort Benning, Georgia, for basic training on 9/11.
Oh,
wow.
And so he was assigned with the 101st Airborne. If you know anything about anything military history, the 101st Airborne, when the country goes to war, the country goes to fight, they go. And so my brother was an infantry grunt. That's what he always wanted to be. And he served, I think, 4 tours total in Afghanistan and Iraq.
Wow.
During the Operation Enduring Freedom, but was involved in some pretty heavy combat. And the most significant part of that whole story with him serving in the military is that was during the time that my father was ill. And I'll never forget, my dad was pretty adamant that my brother would not, other than my brother knowing that my dad was ill, he would not be kind of kept up to date on what was going on. And then it got to a point to where the doctor said, hey, we need to, you probably need to make that phone call. And it was pretty cool. We contacted Rob Portman, was the local congressman at that time. And we contacted his office, and I'll tell you what, literally from the time a phone call was made to Rob Portman's office, I think it was less than 48 hours. My brother was in Afghanistan at the time. He was landing in Nashville, Tennessee.
Wow.
And I remember getting a phone call on one of those sat phones that you see in the movies.
Yeah.
And I only know it was a sat phone because I asked my brother later about it, and it was from like his sergeant or something. And I swear I don't know if they were in combat at the time, but I could literally hear, like, it was like a movie. You could literally hear gunfire and stuff going on in the background.
Oh my God.
Phone.
Wow.
It was crazy, but he was basically just calling to say, hey, I just want to let you know that we're getting Private First Class Cunningham out of here right away, and our thoughts and prayers are with you and your family. I mean, awesome phone call.
That is awesome.
And then we drove down to pick him up in Nashville. And again, I believe everything happens for a reason, but the best part of the story is obviously we're trying to get him home to see my dad, and we were able to bring him home on a Thursday morning. My brother spent some time with my dad Thursday morning. My dad passed away later that night. So
Oh my God.
I always believe things happen.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That's crazy. But that's a great story about your family. Great family, as all
Great
families.
Yep.
Pretty much in Anderson is the same thing. We'll kind of get close to wrapping this up, but I gotta, maybe you can give me Steve and I were trying to think like what a good thing would be for you for like a question, like your favorite. I don't know. You can either go any way you want with this. Either your favorite athlete in Anderson, or a favorite call that you had, or a favorite game. You could pick one. It doesn't really matter which one. But out of any of those, what stands out for you on any of those?
My gosh, I could go. Man, I could have so many favorite athletes. I mean, Dan. I mean, me and my buddies. I mean, we still talk about like Anderson has always been known up until the kind of the Evan Dreyer era. We've always been known to have like solid running backs. So me and my buddies always talk about like the top 5 running backs, and most of us always kind of get the top 5. We just don't always agree on the order. So if I could real quick, I'll answer a couple different questions because I like to give you my top 5 running backs.
Okay,
give it to me.
Number 1. No, actually, should I start?
Don't do them in order. Just name them, just because.
Okay.
Because I
don't want anybody get upset. Okay.
I'll start another thing.
So I'll do them out of order so nobody will know.
Right.
So in no particular order. Of course, I have to put both Andreatis brothers in the top 5.
That's a good call.
Lou and Jake. I know if they ever caught wind of this, if I ever said one of them was better than the other, I would
absolutely.
Never hear it. And that was really cool to me because I was in. Gosh, well, Jake was a couple years ahead of me, but when Lou played, I was in middle school. So, I was just, looking up to Lou because Lou graduated with my sister. So anyway, so those 2 I would throw in there. Joe Sherrill has to be in that top 5. And of course, Kyle Slater has to be in the top 5.
Absolutely. I agree with that one.
I gave you 4 right there. And then my gosh, you could kind of, I would like to, guys that I graduated with, PJ Schiano and Ryan Josefowski were both legit players. But
Jason
there's 3 or
Drusso's
4
got to be
more.
up there too.
Jason Drusso. Oh, dude, Jason Drusso has to be in the top 5. My bad. Oh gosh, man, he lived on my street too.
That's right.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
But Dan, I'll fast forward to probably the game that I remember more than anything announcing at Anderson was actually with you and not over the PA. And it was the regional final against Winton Woods.
Yes, I do remember that. I still owe you a tape.
Tape? Wait, can I get a DVD?
Yes, you can get a DVD.
Yeah. No,
that was VHS back then.
A digital file would be fine.
Okay, yeah, I can work on that for you.
But no, that's the game that I remember because, correct me if I'm wrong, because I know that was 2008, right?
8, yeah, 8. I was gonna say 8.
Yeah. Yep. So that year they had beat Anderson in the regular season.
Yep.
And then we went back there and played them at Princeton in the regional final. And I mean, just going into that game, not many people gave Anderson a shot. Right. I mean, Winton Woods had a defense that was just lights out. I mean, I think they had averaged giving up like 60 or 70 yards rushing a game.
Yeah.
And Slater torched them for like 250 in that one game.
Right.
Yeah. I remember that game, and it kind of that will always stick out as kind of being the and working with you as well. I mean, it was just so much fun to be asked to fill in, for Greg when Greg wasn't around. Sorry, Greg.
I can't believe I wonder why he wasn't there. There was something with work or traveling.
It was a work commitment out of town.
So man, he dying missing that thing.
And you'll get a kick out of this, and this will be short and sweet. But one of the games that people ask me about all the time. So so from like probably the time I started announcing, I can honestly say from like 1993 or probably 1992 until I stopped announcing Anderson football and became a referee, probably the amount of Anderson games I missed home or away is probably I could count on one hand.
Really?
So I never missed a game. I went always home away. I always went. But a couple times, with the racetrack that I announced at, it would conflict on a Friday night. And it's not that I wanted to choose over them or me, but that's like a professional paying gig over there.
Absolutely.
So a little bit different. But anyway, the game that people ask me about all the time, Dan, is the Winton Woods game where Slater had 36 touchdowns or something. I don't know. But so they ask me about that game all the time, and you can find YouTube clips on TV or on YouTube about it. And they ask me, when that game, that wasn't even me announcing. that was the week. That was one of the weeks that I missed, and it was my buddy Garrett Sablehouse filled in for me that night. So people are always like, I remember you calling that kickoff return that he ran 96 yards for. I'm like, yeah, it was great. I wasn't even there.
That's funny. That is funny stuff.
Yeah.
No, that's good, man. That's good stuff. There's always obviously some good memories, and we'll just wrap this up real quick. It's just, we Steve and I always talk about with everybody pretty much how, you not only, you've broadcast, you've worked at La Rosa's, you work at, you do the T-shirt. I mean, you're really vested in Anderson. So obviously you can tell by what you're talking about now, but really what does Anderson mean to you? Because it means a lot to obviously to Steve and I too. So just real quick, if you can kind of talk about what Anderson means to you.
Well, and Dan, I know you and Steve feel the same way as I do, but Anderson's been my life for as long as I can remember. I've always known Anderson. I've always known Anderson as the Redskins, orange and black.
Yep.
And it's been a part of me. It's ingrained in me. When I wanted to go back and become a teacher, I wanted to work in Anderson. Now, so it's the community. It's the people. It's not just about sports. It's not just about football or I was in the marching band, which I still love, but it's not just about that, but it's the community. It's the people. And working there now, seeing it from a different side, it's kind of funny because I felt like I've never even left there because I've always been kind of in tune with what's going on. And even that 20 years where I was out of high school and before I started working there, with the special education program, I was still announcing there. So I was still in and out of the building, but it's the people that make it so special. And that's what makes me wanting to still be a part of it. the reality is, and people say this all the time, oh, when you become a teacher, you'll just work at Anderson. The reality is that may not happen, and I'm okay with that.
Right.
I also know that there are other great schools in this community, and I would be blessed to teach at any school in this area. But right now, I'm called, and my mission is to do the best I can with the kids that I work with every day, and I'm going to keep doing that until I'm asked to do something else.
Yeah, that's awesome, Chad, and just a great thing. And Steve, I think we're the same way he is about the community. Yeah. Just a great place to live and your kids to grow up.
Yeah. Well, Anderson's lucky to have you, Chad.
Well, I am honored and humbled to be a part of it. And I'll just share this with you real quick. A kid that graduated from Anderson a couple years ago that was a football player. Him and I keep in touch. He wasn't a superstar football player, but he sent me a text when all this, and this actually makes me upset, but just kind of chokes me up. He sent me a text when the whole Redskins stuff, the recent Redskins stuff has been going down, and how heartbroken he was just for the fact that, he never meant it as offensive or the way a lot of us feel about all this. And he just shared with me how he'll always remember. I mean, this is a kid that's 21, 22 years old, telling me how he can remember when he was in, elementary school, going to the games and hearing my voice on the PA, and just how special that was to him. And no matter what, he'll always be, an Anderson Redskin and all this other stuff. And I only share that with you because that kind of sums up the way I talk about the community as being about the people. I mean, he had no reason to share that with me, but I just responded to him and said, that makes everything I do worthwhile. I always want to give back as much as I can, and I always want to put Anderson High School and Anderson as the community in the best light we can share that. And I hope that someday when I'm long gone, that's the legacy that I left is that I always wanted Anderson to be known as professional as possible when it came to me representing the school.
Oh, you absolutely did. You absolutely did, Chad. It's kind of weird for me doing the football games, not having you there those last 2 years with Greg and I, because we got so used, because Greg and I would screw up a lot, but we knew that you would make the right call, so we were going off of what you would say. So that was kind of missed. But we do miss you on Friday nights, but we're always good to see you at the UC Claremont games and seeing you around. So I know Steve and I really appreciate it. We really appreciate you joining us tonight. And, I think everybody in the community really likes this thing that we're doing, and hopefully everybody will get a chance to see a side of you that they probably might not be able to see.
Well, thanks again for having me, guys. And I'm just honored to be a part of it. Even though I was number 11, I'm still a little sore about that. No, I'm just kidding. But no, I appreciate what you guys are doing. I know so many people in the community love watching this. And I just hope that, like I said, I can help out wherever I'm asked. And it gives me, Steve, so much joy and pleasure to even fill in for Greg out there. I have so much fun. And even when he's in there, I just have fun hanging out. So
well, then you do it with me too. You help me out too. So I appreciate it.
It's so cool. So I'll keep doing it. And I appreciate everything you guys are doing. And, you guys mean so much to the community as well, and keep up the good work. And we'll keep trying to make Anderson people proud.
Absolutely, Chad, as well too. We really appreciate everything you've done for the community. So we're going to go ahead and wrap this episode up. So for Steve Ellis, Dan Albers, and Chad Cunningham, you've been watching This Week in Anderson. We'll catch you next week.